welcome back and welcome to a new video. I thought that it would be interesting over these next few videos to do a kind of like mini segment. We are going to cover 3 businesses that thrived during COVID. Hello, it's 2023 now and I filmed this video 5 months ago and I'm releasing it now, so enjoy and ignore all the times I mention 2022. But the story is relevant. I filmed it 5 months ago. It's not that crazy. I mean, I think we all can remember COVID was a really tough time. It was so recent, yet it feels so far away in a lot of ways, just thinking about all of the extreme job loss, the supply chain insecurity, the uncertainty of what the next few months would hold. And so many businesses got hit, but then other businesses had an unforeseen uptick that caused them to really take off. I think that's really cool because, you know, it just shows that the market can be so unpredictable at times. And I remember there's this one story that I found about this guy who I think was around my age, honestly, when like little whispers of COVID started coming out. He was one of the first people to really make an interesting COVID listing for a mask on Amazon and became like a millionaire overnight, which is wild. We're actually going to go over brands that predated COVID but saw a complete 180 of their business during the pandemic. The first brand that we are going to be covering is Ooni. Honestly, I never really understood Ooni. For those of you who don't know what Ooni is, they're like these small pizza ovens that you can set up outside, and they can get to the temperatures of the huge stone pizza ovens at restaurants, and you can just cook these incredible pizzas in the comfort of your own home. Like I said, I never really understood the appeal of them. I had so many friends buying them, so many friends raving about them, but I've never really been someone to buy an appliance that can only do one thing. After researching, I now know that Ooni ovens can cook a lot of stuff, but they wanted to market themselves as just a pizza oven. But how I built this, which is where I give all my credit as usual, love them. They're amazing, and they just released an episode on Ooni, and it completely shifted the way that I see Ooni. Also, it is a husband and wife story, and you know I love those. I also would not normally do a story on a brand right after How I Built This did one, but this story really floored me and it gave me the idea to do the kind of segment on COVID brands. I think it'll be really fun for us to do together. I mean, let's be honest, we all love pizza. There's so many different kinds, and I mean, you'd be pressed to find someone who doesn't love pizza. It's just, it's perfect. No matter where you go, there's different kinds of forms. I mean, if you think about it, if you go to Italy versus New York versus Chicago, there's different kinds of pizza everywhere, and they all have their own kind of spin to it. Pizza is so versatile yet so specific, and it's something that, you know, is really fun to make at home. But often, you know, the pizza you make at home, it really doesn't stack up against that you could find at a pizza parlor or a restaurant. That was until Ooni. This is the story of Kristian Topaninaho and Daria Garland. I think the most important thing before we even get into the story of Ooni is talking about the importance of the product and how it kind of created a new place in the market. Pizza ovens get to extremely hot temperatures. I mean, they get to like 900 degrees, whereas our normal ovens inside our homes usually only get up to 500 degrees. I mean, while you can make pizza at home, you can't really make that authentic Neapolitan pizza that you get from the restaurants that cook super fast and kind of have the perfect crust, and it's like crispy, but it's also chewy. All of the different elements to creating a really, really great pizza, you kind of need these pizza ovens for. I actually have a quote from Kristian where he actually kind of explains what I'm trying to get across right now. He says, "It's like trying to sear a steak on a medium warm skillet. It doesn't work. You can't replace the temperature with more time. It's the same with pizza. Temperature is very, very important." But we will hop into that in a little bit. At first, we're just going to do the typical thing that I do with couple stories and tell you a little bit about their background as a couple before they got into Ooni. Kristian was Finnish and Daria was Scottish, and they went to school in Kent, which is a city just outside of London. They met at a house party one night and kept bumping into each other and eventually started dating. And they realized that they worked so well together that right out of school they started a consulting business where they would do kind of new age education consulting. They had moved to London. their business was doing really well for them. The only problem that they had with this business was they realized because it was a consultancy, a lot of people who hired them wanted Kristian and Daria involved. It wasn't something that they could just, keep hiring and building the team because they were the faces of the organization. They're on vacation one day in 2009 in France, and Kristian looks at Daria and he goes, we should start a physical product business because then we can scale that. It's less of our time, and as time goes on, you can get more and more removed from the business. In the back of their minds for a few years, and then in 2011, they have a baby. And this just completely changes everything because they're used to just putting a lot of their time into the business. They work together, so it's not like they're lacking any personal time. However, when they have this baby, they're like, oh God, we want to scale back our hours. We want to be home with this child more. And so they scale back with the consultancy. Neither of them are huge pizza makers, but Kristian does really enjoy making pizzas at home and gets to thinking one day about how he wants to have that authentic Neapolitan pizza experience at home. He actually looks into installing the huge ovens into their place, but sees that it's really expensive and just isn't about the idea. Which then gets him to thinking, well, how is this not possible to do on a smaller scale and a more affordable scale? And why can't I bring this quality to my own home? He goes on the computer and he's like, well, surely this has to exist. There's gotta be someone doing this. There was absolutely no one. No one. Then that got him thinking even more of like, even if this doesn't exist, I don't know if there's like an opportunity for it in the marketplace, but like, I want this for me. So he takes his iPad and over the next month is just sketching kind of the model of how he could make this work. Let me remind you, he's no engineer. This guy studied photography at an art school, does his due diligence with his research, and he's really hyper-focused on creating this product, and he really believes that it can be done. After this month, he pitches it to Daria, and she was like, okay, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I mean, it makes sense. I'm not gonna go super deep into the design of the Ooni because I'm also not an engineer. I am more of an anthropologist. As you know, we are historians here on this channel. A normal pizza oven also, in order to reach that 900-degree temperature, they have to heat up for hours, and it's quite an energy-intensive process. So he needed to be able to, if you're making a smaller model for people's homes, he knew that like having something that took hours to heat up wasn't really going to cut it. When I talk about like he was coming up with the craziest things, he was trying to like design a mini jet engine where instead of liquid fuel, you put in wood pellets and that heats it up really fast. And that actually did make it into the first Ooni oven. But again, we are not going to go over all of those specifics. Just know that he designed this whole thing himself. When he got like the more finalized sketches, he brought them to a metal working shop in London and presented the sketches, and he was like, can you guys make this for me? Can you just make me a prototype? And this metal shop made like fences mostly. But the guy there was like, yeah, sure. I'll do it for like 50 pounds, which is so cheap. It's insane. Over the next few months now, Kristian is prototyping and testing and, putting pizzas in, trying to cook them. After a while, he finds his perfect starting product. We have transitioned to the gold couch to talk about the golden opportunity that is Kickstarter. So I love crowdfunding campaigns. I think it's such a good way to raise money if you want to keep all the shares inside of your own business. And it's such a cool way of getting your community involved in your funding rounds. They decide to put Ooni up on Kickstarter. All Kristian wants is $10,000 to start and get everything off the ground. And they had a fairly successful Kickstarter. They ended up making it to $17,000. Now, at this point, they've outgrown the metal workshop that they were at. They've got 100 Oonis to send out over the span of 6 months. That's when they promised their Kickstarters that they would get them once the campaign ended. And they end up finding a new facility in Finland that's producing all the Oonis. They wanted to get them out so quickly, and they didn't have a fulfillment center yet, that they were literally taking these Oonis to the post office and sending them. And the crazy thing is, 40% of their backers were from the US. So they were sending these decently sized and, you know, decently weighted packages all the way to the US. I literally don't know how they made money on those orders and how they didn't just plow through all the Kickstarter stuff just shipping alone. That's how they got all of the first Oonies out to their customers. Once they get these out, you know, sales are trickling in over the next year. They actually do about $170,000, which is a really amazing number for your first year, but also you have to remember that in a physical product business, so much of that money just has to be put back into the business. You've got to fund a lot of inventory if you're planning to scale, and et cetera, et cetera. So they're scaling more and more over these next few years. They start producing in China, which allows them to produce at a cheaper cost and, you know, make things more affordable for the rest of their consumers. Around 2015, Daria quits their consulting business and joins Ooni full-time. The beautiful thing is, as they're scaling and obviously needing to bring in more investment, every time they brought in more money, it was through crowdfunding. A lot of people will do this to launch and then, you know, end up partnering with different VC firms later or large name investors because you want to show off who is giving attention to your business. But they were really keen on staying privately owned and funded by their community. Their community is a really big part of what made them be so successful, is because they were constantly iterating based on consumer insights, consumer feedback, and consumer funding. Another thing worth mentioning is that the whole lifespan of them until 2018, they were called Ooni with UUNI, and in 2018 they decided to change their name, which is one of the most daunting things you can do as a physical product business owner, because I mean, the amount of money that you put into packaging and marketing and like across the board, it is so tough to change your name. However, when it was UUNI, which by the way is the Finnish word for oven, it kept like auto-correcting in Google to like UNI, like uni, or you know, a lot of people would hear people say Ooni and then not really know how to spell it. They wanted it just super easy for consumers to be able to search and find them. In 2018, they just changed to OONI, which is the phonetic spelling of Ooni, obviously. For the average Joe Schmo like myself, I've never made pizzas at a Neapolitan restaurant before, so it's a completely different skill than me popping in a frozen pizza into my oven. So there was a lot of educating that came with selling Oonies early on. They were able to successfully do so through their marketing and creating videos and even letting out recipes of the perfect dough people should use, all of that. All right, y'all, this is when shit gets real. They've been working on this business for years, and then 2020 hits. It's COVID, things are shutting down, everybody's in a panic, and a bunch of their retailers start actually canceling orders. At this point, Ooni was part direct-to-consumer website sales and also selling through retailers. They had just purchased like a whole new order of inventory, and then all of these retailers cancel their orders. What they didn't realize was even from the beginning of March 2020, they just start seeing their sales go up and up and up and up on their direct-to-consumer site. This makes total sense, right? I mean, people wanted something to do at home that was exciting and new and something to pass the time. Do you remember bread making? I mean, that was something that everyone was doing in 2020. Here's a crazy number. They were doing $13 million in 2019, and by the end of 2020, they were doing 50 million. That's 13 million to 50 million in 1 year. I mean, that's so wild. And everyone was just, mass buying these Oonies. And they said that like all these celebrities started buying them, and they were just like incredulous at what was happening to their business almost overnight. And obviously, while the marketing and sales teams are having the best time of their lives, they said that their operations team was just like going through hell for like over a year. I mean, think about it, with all of the supply chain issues that we had, all the shipping issues we had during COVID, and then all of these people are buying Oonies en masse, and their direct-to-consumer business just like hadn't been built up to that level. Another crazy stat was that they had to scale their team fast, and if anybody knows hiring and building a business, you kind of want to do it slowly and methodically and make sure you're getting all the right people into the door. While they had 45 employees in 2020, they now, in 2022, as I'm releasing this video, have 350 employees. So that means that they grew by 305 employees in 2 years, which, you know, again, might be normal for something like a tech company, but this is a pizza oven startup. And now, I mean, Ooni almost feels like a household name. They really, like I said, crafted that new place in the market. And now if you go on Amazon, you can find so many copycats doing the same thing. Kristian called this a decade ago just because he wanted for himself a more accessible way to make delicious pizza. That's the beauty of entrepreneurship. You're always finding like a weird hole in the market that other people may have not thought of, and bringing something new into the world that provides value. Daria says at one point in the interview, which I really loved, she says, "We've always seen creativity as problem solving, and that's how we approached our first business, that's how we approached Ooni." Another thing I think is important to touch on is we saw a huge lift in a lot of brands during COVID. I mean, at least for myself, who works in direct-to-consumer sales, and you know, I know so many of the other brands in the at least direct-to-consumer food space, and it felt like we all had hit a gold rush. There was so much money in direct-to-consumer. We've started to see with, you know, the tough economic climate right now and inflation, so many of these businesses are just going bust every day, and there's so many more that are predicted to come over the next year. You know, another example is like Peloton. They had like a huge influx in users during COVID, and they were like the hot new company, and now they're kind of going downhill. Ooni has stayed successful. In this interview, they go back and forth between pounds and dollars a lot, so sorry. Now, they are a 200 million pound per year business. 13 million before COVID, 50 million in 2020. They are now at 200 million. What made them the 200 million pound a year business that they are now? A big thing is that, as I always say on this channel, word of mouth marketing is the most effective form of marketing out there. If you're gonna set your pizza oven up out in your backyard and make a pizza, you're probably not gonna do it with just you and your spouse, or you know, you and your one friend. You are going to invite, you know, at least like another 2-3 people over, because making pizzas in a pizza oven is really fun. Because it was such a communal activity, there were people coming over, seeing the Ooni in action, being like, what is this? The person who owned it would be like, oh, this is my Ooni oven. That person would go home, Google Ooni, probably buy one for themselves, and that's, you know, a huge chain reaction that was happening. And then on top of that, while this business started before the heyday of Instagram, we also now see that, you know, making these Ooni pizzas and Instagramming them, like, it's a fun whole Instagrammable activity. The last thing, like I said, was COVID. I mean, COVID, as terrible as it was, people like them who could keep individuals entertained and create, you know, happiness and keep the vibes up of the general public while so much sadness and craziness was going on in the world. Obviously, their business just took off. It's really become a staple in so many people's outdoor gathering social lives, which is awesome. All right, guys, so that is kind of the whole story on Ooni. Like I said, pizza is so important to so many of us. I will probably be buying an Ooni. Hope you enjoyed this story, and I hope you go and check out Ooni if you've never heard of it right after this video. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.